for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for clicking on our podcast link. I know there's a lot of options, so for you guys to listen to us, that's a really big deal. Super Bowl preview, Kansas City Chiefs. I talked to longtime mentor, good friend, Alex Gold from Kansas City. Does a radio show up there. He's in Miami for Super Bowl week, so we talked to him about the Super Bowl, what he expects out of Patrick Mahomes, what do we expect at the run game, why the defense for the Chiefs is a little bit better than everybody's talking about, and what we can expect from Sunday. Really excited stuff. Stick around and listen to it. I'm going to shut up. Here's Alex right now. All right, on the phone line right now we have Alex Gold, who I've been kind of keeping up with him for the past year. He goes to Kansas City. Before we get started into the Chiefs and the Super Bowl, kind of talk to us about your journey back to Kansas City.
Yeah, man, it's been a wild month or so. So I was working down, as you probably know, in Houston at SB Nation Radio, and I've been trying to get back to Kansas City, or at least someday trying to get back to Kansas City, and an opportunity presented itself, and man, it's been wild getting back home to a city I grew up in and teams that I care about, and to hop onto this playoff ride, man. It's been pretty crazy, and now it takes us to South Beach in Miami, and here we are just 3 days away from Super Bowl 54. So it's been a great opportunity and great first month, that's for sure.
I will say that. Some people go to certain cities and the entire sports scene falls apart. They're the kiss of death. And it seems like you've been the lucky charm, yeah.
No, very fortunate. I've had plenty of people joke about that. I would say, though, I lived in Kansas City for 20-something years, so I can't say, I just arrived and all of a sudden they started winning. But I'm obviously thrilled that the first time they're in a Super Bowl in 50 years, I happen to be, able to be part of the journey, if you will, from a media perspective.
It's so much fun. So let's talk about the Chiefs, because this was the team coming into the year that I thought had the best chance in the AFC to win the whole thing. When Patty hurts his knee, though, I was worried. Where was your worry, or what was your panic meter earlier in the season when he dislocates his kneecap?
Oh, man, yeah. I thought the season was over, didn't everybody? Even before we knew it was a dislocated kneecap, just watching that play on the QB sneak where he wouldn't get up, I'm thinking ACL, thinking done for the season, thinking how does this impact his career, worst-case scenario kind of stuff. Then he ultimately doesn't get carted off. We hear it's a dislocated kneecap. You take a deep breath and say, okay, all right, long-term career stuff should be fine, but you're still saying, man, this season might be lost. He sits out. Matt Moore wins one game for the Chiefs while he's out. He gets back quickly. Mahomes, because of that, I think also benefited greatly in a way from being hurt with the kneecap, because he was able to heal the bum ankle. And that's why here on the back end of the regular season, into the postseason, we've seen him be so much better and effective. He's been a leading rusher even the last 2 weeks because he is healthy. He's able to not just throw off of he's able to throw off the back foot and everything and plant his feet, I should say. And so I think we've seen just an adjustment from him, and he's playing as good as he has all season right now.
It's been really fun to watch, and I don't think anybody knew, and we joke about this entire 2 weeks since the AFC Championship game, that nobody really knew how good Patrick Mahomes could be in the NFL. But last year I thought was just a peek hole into what we could do with him going forward. What have you liked from him this season that you saw growth from Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, it's interesting because the conversation this past offseason with him was, all right, regression. Are you going to see that sophomore regression, his second year as a starting quarterback? And I said, yeah, depending on how you view regression. If you view it just by stats, after you throw for 50-plus touchdowns and 5,000 yards, I think it's natural you're going to have regression. But he would tell you this, and I think if you watch him, he's actually been a better quarterback at times this year. It doesn't necessarily mean his numbers are as good, because they're not. But he's been better about looking at, not looking at his reads, I should say. He's been better about maybe not taking as many risks. He still does, but you think about the big knock on him coming out of college, and it was, he's going to throw a ton of interceptions. He's going to be Brett Favre, right? That was the equivalent that people had. And he's making those crazy Brett Favre plays, but he's not throwing the turnover, throwing the interceptions, leading the turnovers. He's protecting the football. One of the more intelligent players. Andy Reid even was asked about it. And Alex Smith, who was one of the more intelligent players in the league, but Patrick Mahomes in year 2 now, he's already doing things that Andy Reid hasn't seen in terms of an intelligence level. And then, as you guys saw from just a week or so ago against the Titans, that 27-yard touchdown run. That's just pure athleticism. He even had a little head fake on the defender. That's just stuff you can't teach. That's natural instinct. that's just God-gift ability that he has, and it's obviously fun to watch for everybody, and a reason why Chiefs fans are so thrilled that maybe this is the start of a deep run for Kansas City, not just this year, but the long term for the next 10-plus years.
That's what I'm saying, and I've said to other people before that he is exactly what I wanted out of Aaron Rodgers. Like, he is everything that I thought Rodgers could be early in his career, and Patrick Mahomes has already almost surpassed a lot of the things that I thought we were going to see out of Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and wait, we could be talking 5 years from now and saying, okay, he didn't take advantage of the opportunity. A lot of people thought Aaron Rodgers would have 4 rings, right, or 3 rings. A lot of people thought Dan Marino, of course, would get a ring. He got to it so early in his career. You know, Terry Bradshaw took him until he was 26 to get his first. We all know he ended up with multiple rings and is one of the greatest to ever play the game. So I think Aaron Rodgers, the difference, too, will be interesting is the coaching and the wide receivers. There's a lot of people still, I think, that feel, all right, a couple of years from now when the Chiefs aren't able to keep a hold of the Travis Kelce's of the world, for example, and who knows long term, even though Tyreek Hill just got a new deal, what's the offense look like when he doesn't have this unbelievable weapons? But I think as long as him and Andy Reid are paired together, things will be all right. I mean, part of the problem with Aaron Rodgers was him and Mike McCarthy down the stretch didn't get along a whole lot, and Aaron Rodgers has been kind of an average quarterback this past season as well, and so I just think right now it's so easy to say, and when you look at Patrick Mahomes, that he doesn't have bad games. He really hasn't had a bad game in his career. I mean, he doesn't get blown out. He has never been blown out in his career. He's lost one game, I think, by 7 points. The rest has been less than that. He is in every game. We've seen it this postseason, even when he's down 24-0, when he's down 17-7. I mean, there is truly no game where you don't think they have an opportunity to win because of that guy, number 15.
So let's talk about the playoffs a little bit, because they get down big to the Texans. They get down pretty big to the Titans, especially with the defense that the Chiefs have and the run game that the Tennessee Titans had. What do you think, coming out of those 2 games, is the biggest takeaway for the Chiefs right now going forward?
Well, I mean, I'll say just on as far as takeaway for the game, offensively, it's that this offense is clicking like 2018 once again. That has been something we hadn't seen here in 2019, even the fact that the offense is still one of the best in the league. You hadn't seen the efficiency and the quick strike as much as you did in 2018. Well, that's what we've seen exactly from the Texans game on, right? They're down 24-0, and they end up going, 41-7, I think, outscoring the Texans the rest of the way, scoring, 6 touchdowns and 8 in a row, but 6 touchdowns almost in what seemed like 20 minutes of real-time action there. It was mind-boggling. And so the takeaway is that this offense is clicking as good as it has all year. Defensively, it's that they found a way to make adjustments like they have all year. If you look at the Titans matchup early in the season, they give up $188 or so to Derrick Henry. They gave up a bunch of yards to Carlos Hyde to the Texans early on. I think besides the defense just as a whole playing better, a guy that doesn't get talked about nationally enough is Mike Pennell. He was a waiver wire, just a free agent pickup, middle of the season, was inactive for the Titans game early in the season, wasn't on the roster for the first Texans game. This team gives up about 50-plus yards less on the ground when he has played. I think at least when it comes to the rushing defense, Mike Pennell has been a big part of it. He doesn't get as much credit, of course, as Frank Clark, as Tyrann Mathieu, as Chris Jones, but I think he deserves a lot of credit and should be for the rush defense.
It's impressive to me, the Chiefs' defense, especially against the rush. Like you mentioned, they're able to shut down Derrick Henry, essentially. What do you think they're going to be able to do against the 49ers' run game?
Yeah, that's the number one question, right? Just how do you slow down that zone rushing scheme from Kyle Shanahan? It's been that same scheme going back to his dad and Mike Shanahan. And what we've heard from Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, we've had former running backs like Maurice Jones-Drew on our show here on Radio Row down in Miami, and it's all just to be about the gaps more than anything else. It's not like, the Titans are trying to just, run right at you and kind of just out-physical you, if that makes sense, and use physicality. This is more kind of being patient. It's not as simple as just cutting the cutback runs from Raheem Mostert and company, but no, they have a tall task. This is the type of running scheme they really haven't seen this year. And so if they're able to force Jimmy Garoppolo to throw the ball 25 times or so, that is exactly what you want to see, I think, if you're Kansas City. That's not what you want if you're the 49ers. I mean, he's going to throw the ball, obviously, more than he did at the NFC title game where he had just 8 pass attempts and they ran all over Green Bay. I think Kansas City will clearly do a much better job against Mostert and company than they did. But no, the run scheme is a concern. The O-line for the 49ers is fantastic, but this Chiefs defense has been playing really well against the run. And the biggest thing, they just have so much confidence right now, and they keep calling it really just championship swagger throughout this postseason.
So let's talk about Kelsey versus Kittle. I think this is going to be one of those, it potentially could be a career-defining moment for both those players, because this is the first time in my memory that we have two of the best 3 tight ends in the league playing against each other. And this is the game where Kelsey could separate himself from the rest of the pack and say, hey, Gronkowski's gone, I'm the new tight end in the league.
Yeah, no, it's a great battle. I mean, the top 2 tight ends in football, depending on what side you're on, you say it's Kelsey. The other side will tell you it's Kittle. They're both fantastic. I think Kittle, it's interesting to me, he gets so much credit because he's such a great blocker as well, which he absolutely is. He should get credit for it. But people don't talk about Kelsey's blocking in the run like they should. I mean, this past game against the Titans, a couple big runs, Tyreek Hill and the touchdown, there was a great block from Travis Kelce. We know he's a pass catcher. I don't think he gets enough credit for the blocker that he is. And I'll be curious to see how Kansas City uses Kelce in terms of also to help in protection, at least with trying to shifting some guys. You know, they did it a little bit against J.J. Watt, but against these 4 pass rushers for the Niners, they're going to need to help out of the O-line a little bit, even though the O-line for KC has played pretty well. But I can't wait to watch these tight ends. I mean, Kittle is an unbelievable weapon. Kelce had that monster game against the Texans, and then you saw the Titans try to shut him out, and they did for the most part, but then guess what? Then you had Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins have monster performances. This, to me, is such an even matchup when it comes on Sunday. I can't wait to get here. I think this is going to be a Super Bowl that people will talk about for a while. It's not going to be like last year, which was a big dud.
Very interesting stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit more about Tyreek Hill, who has been the redemption story, I think, one of the better redemption stories for Andy Reid, but this is something he's been getting known for, is taking kind of troubled players or taking players that society and the NFL might not want and kind of rehabilitating them. What do you think about that? Or is that like the wrong take to have, or have you seen it?
No, I mean, it's just different in Kansas City, to be honest with you. I mean, in Kansas City, it's not really talked about as much. People feel like, you know, he was, dare I say, at times even people feel like with the audio that came out back in spring from a local media outlet, they feel like he was the victim, which is ridiculous. But there was some ill-advised reporting that went on around the Tyreek Hill situation. But by no means is he the victim, or by no means is he this perfect human being or anything like that. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to not like the situation. It is more of a national talking point than in Kansas City at this point, whether you think that's the way it should be or not. But I'll tell you what, it's just not something that gets brought up anymore. I recognize why I think here around the Super Bowl it's talked about. I think it should be talked about on a national level. These guys are hell of football players, and with that, you keep on winning. And unfortunately, it tends to skew some people and cause people to forget about some of the things that have taken place in the past. I think, unfortunately, it's just the sad reality of where things are in sports. If you're so talented, there's certain things that people are willing to forget that they wouldn't forget from you or I.
That's a good point. And especially this week when we talk about Kobe Bryant and his death on Sunday, there's a lot of that kind of going around. So give me your predictions for the Super Bowl. What are some X's and O's? What are some things that you're going to be looking for on Sunday?
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned a little bit, I think clearly the rushing attack from Mostert and Coleman, and who knows, maybe even we see Matt Breida is going to be a huge focus for this Chiefs defense. But at the same time, I expect a lot of play action from the 49ers. When you had Garoppolo only throw it 8 times against the Packers, I think they actually come out throwing in this game against Kansas City and try to see how Kansas City is going to match up with Kittle. And I also believe the 49ers wide receiver core deserves or should be getting some more credit than it does. I think, you know, Emmanuel Sanders is a fantastic weapon for them. They can make some big plays. I think people can't forget about that. I wonder, you know, if Tyrann Mathieu is going to be matched up at times with Kittle, what kind of performance are we going to see from Bashaud Breeland, for example, in the secondary for KC? I think this turns into a shootout. I think the Chiefs are going to be able to move the ball. I understand the pass rush for the Niners. They're going to get to him, but I think this Chiefs O-line has proven this postseason they can hold up. I just wonder, as far as my biggest concern for Kansas City is going to be more on what they do defensively than offensively. I really don't have much of a concern with Mahomes and company. I just feel like they're going to get theirs, and it's about truly mistakes. It sounds cliche, but if Kansas City plays a clean game and is not turning the ball over, I really like them in this one. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it goes down to the fourth quarter. I think this thing is tied or very close entering the fourth. I do like Kansas City to win 38-34. In a way, I think the 49ers all around are probably a better football team. But when you have Mahomes and with the way they are playing offensively and clicking and scoring at will at times, it seems like I just can't go against Mahomes right now. He's become a quarterback I don't think you can bet against. He's got to prove me wrong before I don't bet with him. So that's where I'm at. I like Kansas City 38-34.
See, I like Kansas City too, and that's a really good score. I might steal that from you, Alex, because the only thing that's kind of put me off is Trent Dilfer came on one of those sports talk shows and was talking about how Elway and Marino, both of those guys, big arm quarterbacks who struggled in the Super Bowl or weren't able to win the first time around in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't buy it, but at the same time, it gives me pause.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what clip you're talking about. We talked about it on our show, and, hey, Trent Dilfer's the Super Bowl winning quarterback. But to me, the way I took that, first of all, Montana was going up against, L.A. and Marino went up against Montana, first of all, in that whole scenario he brought up. But to me, he essentially is saying that he'd rather take the average quarterback than the guy that's won MVP and the guy that at some point maybe people are talking about as the best to play the position, or at least in the conversation when his career is over. I think some of it is Trent Dilfer was an average quarterback, won a Super Bowl. So naturally, he is kind of saying, hey, I know average quarterbacks. He's the prime example of one that won a Super Bowl. And he's looking at Garoppolo, who I think is probably a little bit above average, but closer to average than not. And therefore, he's picking Garoppolo to win it. That's kind of how I took it more than anything else.
See, it's interesting because I just got done talking to a 49ers writer, and I said Garoppolo feels like a top 10 quarterback to me. I'm not saying like 1 or 2, but like in the 5 to 7, 8 range. Does that seem about right?
See, I think he's more in the middle, honestly, man. I'm not as hard on Garoppolo as my co-host. My co-host has been all over him all week. I think Garoppolo is better than my co-host Cody does, but I don't think he's in that top 7 rate at all. I think it's closer to that 12 to 15 range, quite honestly. I will say this. I was so impressed with Garoppolo when they went down to New Orleans earlier this year. I think it was 48-45 or 48-46. They went in a shootout. He had to throw the football. That was the best game of Garoppolo's career. And down the stretch, it seemed as though he would lose some trust, at least, from his head coach, Kyle Shanahan. They weren't throwing the ball as much. I don't know if that is truly scheme, and they felt like they could run the ball, but I do wonder if there's concern there from Shanahan if they have to get into a shootout against a Chiefs team on Sunday, that he's going to make that big, crucial mistake. I don't know how you can be too confident in Garoppolo to go and win a Super Bowl by having to throw it. It was a hell of a performance against New Orleans on the road and all that, but we haven't seen anything close to that here since that game. So I don't think he's a bad quarterback at all whatsoever, but I think when you're comparing the matchup at the QB spot, I mean, it's not even close to speak.
I agree. It seems like the Chiefs have the two biggest advantages in the coaching and quarterback room, and I think in the NFL in 2020, that's what matters the most. Yeah,
no question, man. No, I'm with you. Yeah, quarterback is huge, and I just think we're in for a shootout. I think Garoppolo, if you're asked, I think Garoppolo will end up throwing close to 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. I absolutely think so. But Mahomes is easily going to throw for over 300 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game. I just think you're going to also see one big play. Somebody's going to, whether it's a mistake or not, somebody on one of the defenses is going to make that big game-changing play. Even though we're talking about the offenses in the shootout, who's going to get that big turnover? Is it going to be the Honey Badger and Tyrann Mathieu? Is it going to be Nick Bosa with a strip sack? This 49ers team has caused plenty of fumbles throughout this season. Now, Kansas City hasn't had an issue with their quarterback fumbling, but Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman, those guys have fumbled the ball a little bit. I think if the Niners are to win the game, it's going to be because they're going to cause a big fumble in the game that swings everything. So I can't wait, man, to get going here on Sunday. We're at the point in time where it's Thursday. It's like, hey, let's get to Sunday. Let's get to some football.
I love it. Alex, tell them where they can find you on Twitter. And, I'm going to be listening to you tomorrow and hopefully on Monday, too.
Absolutely, man. It's been a heck of a week here in Miami. You can follow me on Twitter at Alex Gold and catch our show over on 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City from 10 to 2. And let's enjoy the Super Bowl weekend, man.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on.
You got it. Thanks, Andrew.
Alex Gold, the man with the golden voice. Thank you so much for listening. This is another one of those Super Bowl preview podcasts. I think we're going to have 2 more. One with Sam OJ talking about prop bets and like what we want to see out of the Super Bowl, and one with another Kansas City writer kind of getting more in-depth on some of those storylines that we were talking to Alex about. But it's always great to have Alex on the show. I loved him when he was at SB Nation Radio. I watched listened to his Golden Hour, countless hours of his show when he was on SB Nation Radio. So it was really cool to have him on. Hopefully we can talk to him on Monday Talk to Patrick from the 49ers on Monday, too, depending on what team wins and what team loses. So, a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline. We also have Film Friday. That's going to come out. And then Tuesday, a lot of interesting stuff because there's an episode of Catfish on MTV that circles around San Marcos, the city that I live in. And also, the Michael Vick documentary on ESPN, that comes out Thursday night. So, we're going to get going to get into that, too, hopefully, when we get part 2 of that documentary coming out. So it's going to be good stuff. Really excited to put out content. We are in less than 2 weeks. We've done less than 2 weeks of podcasting, and we're getting a lot of really good responses. And the only way we can get good responses is by great listeners like you. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and you got to continue to send it to people. It's been a lot of fun. We get a lot of really good stuff, and you are half the show. So I can't do this without you, and hopefully you don't listen to another podcast without me. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Love you guys. Be safe out there.